What if burnout isn't about resilience? What if disengagement isn't about motivation? And what if toxic workplaces aren't created by bad employees? What if I said everything you've been told about culture is missing the real story? Welcome to Culture Shock. I'm Dr. Lauran Star, and every week we'll be pulling apart the system shaping modern work, leadership, and society. No spin, no fluff, no buzzwords, and no performative optimism. Just the psychology, power dynamics, leadership, behavior, and cultural forces driving the world around us. Because what you tolerate becomes your culture, and culture is shaping everything. This is Culture Shock. Let's get uncomfortable. I am your host, Dr. Lauran Star, and today we're going to be diving into the performance of leadership as it's replacing authentic leadership. I really go in depth on this in my book, See Dick Throw a Hissy Fit, because that's what we're seeing in the societal lens. We're also seeing it in the workplace lens. And let's be honest here, my friends, leadership has a branding problem. Actually, that's not true. Leadership has a leadership problem, and we're utilizing branding to hide it. Because somewhere over the last decade, leadership stopped being measured by outcomes and really started being measured by optics. And here's what's funny, right? We see it more blatantly in society about it being optics. One only has to turn on the news, no matter what news station you listen to, and it's all about optics. All about optics. You don't believe me? What the hell was the fight on the front lawn of the White House all about this past weekend for 47th birthday? Hello, that's all about optics. And I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole today. That's an after hours conversation. So yeah, I mean, it's all around us. And when we see that societal bend into what leadership looks like, it trickles into the workplace, or it's always been in the workplace, but now we can see it more because it's so blatant. Right? Take a look at like the company corporate video. Is it real? Is it authentic? Or is it just optics? It's optics, I'm telling you right now. And those carefully scripted town halls, or even the executive headshot. When was the last time you as a leadership team sat down and decided what your principles and priorities are from a leadership lens, especially around your principles? I bet you haven't in a while. And if you have, bravo to your developmental team that's putting that together. Everybody's talking about leadership. Everybody's a leadership speaker. There's so many leadership podcasts out there. But I have found the more people that talk about it, the fewer people are actually leading. And employees know this. Hey, so you want some fact to your fiction? According to Gallup, only 21% of employees strongly agree that they trust their organization's leadership. Only 21%. Let that sink in. You know what else is 21%? Less than 21% of the citizens of the United States, both Republicans and Democrats, are trusting the organization we call the United States of America leadership. I'm hoping that you're starting to see some of that culture infinity loop swinging in there that we've talked about. We've never had more leadership communication or visibility as we have today, yet trust is continually dropping. And I've got to ask, how is that possible? We complain and say, we want to see leaders. We want to see them in action. We want to hear about it. How is it we're not trusting as much? Because, my friends, communication is not leadership. It's communication. And visibility is not leadership. Neither is charisma. Posting about leadership, definitely not leadership. Those of you that are talking about leadership from that theoretical framework because you've never actually led a large group of people, especially under pressure, it's just theory. You may have a podcast about this from a theoretical lens, but are you knee deep in it? Do you know what it's like to really fire someone? Do you know the emotional trauma that takes place on both sides? How about workplace culture? Do you really know how to shake up that culture, how to shape that culture, how to uncover what's needed? That's true leadership, knowing those answers, or um, not enough people are doing leadership. And then there's the other pendulum where, we see organizations saying, well, everybody's a leader. And if you're a manager, we're really working on your leadership skills. And I'm gonna pull back here and go, bullshit. You're not. All right. So I wasn't gonna do this, but I'm going to. And I love that you're tuning in. Here's my rant. We need both outstanding managers and outstanding leaders. And there's a big difference between manager and leader. It's a different way to think. It's a different way to think. Yes, there are skills in both. And yes, great managers, great leaders have to build up all of those skills. We see what happens when some of those skills are missing. Look at Steve Jobs. Great leader, natural born leader. He was born to lead. Really great leadership, great innovation, great ideas, very visionary, but really lacks some skills. So we do need both. Think of it this way. Managers love a box. They they work in a parameter that I like to call a box. They work in a space where it's pretty much we're going to do X, Y, and Z to get B. Where leaders, the leader mindset, there is no box. It's a different way to problem solve. It's a different way to think. Leaders struggle to think inside the manager's framework, and managers will struggle to think inside the leadership framework because they are different mindsets. Now, I can go on for this for hours. Please feel free to shoot me an email if you disagree. I also believe, since I'm putting it out there, great leaders are absolutely born. Good leaders are absolutely made. There's a huge difference there. Shoot me an email if you disagree. Go right ahead, Lauran at drlauranstar.com. So, jumping back into the program, because I digress. So, what the hell are we actually watching when we put on the TV, or when we get called into meetings, or when we're in the cafe? What the hell are we watching? Let's start with a simple observation. We live in a performance economy. Think about this. Social media rewards performance. It could be financially rewarding, it could be attention rewarding. Politics rewards performance. This isn't new, my friends. This has been going on since the birth of the United States, since the Constitution was written. News rewards performance. Influencers rewards performance. Algorithms make people very, very rich if they have positive algorithms, if they have high algorithms, because the society is feeding off of that like breakfast. So why would leadership be immune? Why would it? It isn't. In fact, leadership may be one of the biggest victims of performance and reward, because today's leaders are increasingly being rewarded for what appears to be effective rather than being effective. Think of right initiatives that or taglines. We're going to build a healthy culture. We're going to use our North Star. Crap. Womp, 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 womp. This is what I like to call leadership theater: performance of empathy, performance of competency, performance of transparency and accountability, and performance of courage. Look, I've worked with organizations where there's been little to no accountability, yet the leadership team would say, we are so accountable to each other, or we have so much courage, and they really don't. But it's the performance. It's saying we are transparent about everything we do. Meanwhile, you have no idea, your employees have no idea that a layoff is right around the corner. That's not transparency. And I get it. You could be saying that, hey, look, we do what's best for business. I get that. You can't share everything, but you can be transparent about how the company is doing financially rather than pushing that aside. You can educate your employees as to what that might mean. Now, before somebody gets offended, this isn't every leader. So calm your hissy fits down, take a deep breath. There are extraordinary leaders everywhere. However, the problem is the system increasingly rewards that perception management side, right? And perception management scales faster than actual leadership. It's so easy to announce a cultural initiative that's going to fix culture. My friends, Culture is not one initiative. It's not one thing that can fix culture. So much more. If there's an issue with your culture, you have to look at all the symptoms and then do a full diagnostic. But it's easier to just say, hey, look, we got burnout. We're just going to launch a wellness program. Good to go. Moving on. No, it's easier to talk about accountability than to hold a high performing executive accountable. Hey, so and so, why do we have $5 million in outstanding debt? Explain that to me. You're the head of finance. It's easier to post about trust than earn it. And your employees, we're not dumb. We know the difference. It's like when you talk out your mouth, but it comes out your ass. We as employees are fully aware of what you're doing, what that narrative seems to be. I hate that word, but yet that's what everybody's focused on these days is what is the narrative? How can we control that narrative? And leadership is so guilty of this. More information, some more facts for you. The Elderman Trust Barometer continues to show trust in institution remain fragile. And Gallup consistently shows managers account for roughly 70% of the variance in employee engagement. What? Yeah, it's your managers. It's your managers that account for 70% of the variance in employee engagement, not human resources. Your managers. Think about that. I hope that made you pause. One leader can dramatically impact engagement, performance, retention, turnover, burnout. One, yet many organizations still promote based on technical expertise, visibility, tenure, relationships. I just went through this where I was questioned, well, how can you let that person go? They've been here 10 years. Being somewhere 10 years doesn't mean that you have developed. It doesn't mean that you can be strategic. It doesn't mean you can do your job. Being somewhere 10 years is just being somewhere 10 years. What have you done in that 10 years to grow, learn, develop, and help scale your department? What have you done? If you haven't done anything, then in my world, in my business frame, bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye. Because they act surprised when, and these are the individuals that then go, what? Culture's deteriorating? Look, employees aren't confused. We're observant. We watch what our leaders do and not what leaders say. And all too often, those two slam into each other. They do not match. So if you're a leader tuning in and listening, right, I want you to start thinking about what are you saying and what are you doing? And are they in alignment or are they not in alignment? And if they're not in alignment, what's getting in the way of that alignment? It could be another leader. It could be the C-suite. It could be the direction or the vision of the organization. How do we then get aligned with that? Because the people that you're leading see this. And that not only dings your reputation, it also dings the reputation of the organization because employees don't always stay. So things to keep in mind. So why is this happening? Let's look at the system underneath all of this. Yes, we're going to be talking about the culture infinity loop again. Here's where we connect society and organizations. That culture infinity loop, organizations don't exist outside of culture. They absorb that culture in. And right now, my friends, society is rewarding performance over substance every day, multiple times a day. Look at the receipts for this. We've got politicians are rewarded for attention. Influencers are rewarded for attention, right? It's who can make the biggest voice, who can stir up the moths the fastest. Media's rewarded for attention. And we would have these normal stories rather than some of these outlandish ones on certain channels that just make you shake your head like people eating dogs and cats. Need I say more? At the end of the day, your algorithms that are created are rewarded for attention. And then that attention in all silos becomes currency. People are getting rich off of the performance over substance. And when we look at it from the opposite lens, right? When we look at substance over performance, it's not as rewarded as the other way around. Attention often favors confidence, and confidence can make someone look like they're competent, because visibility over credibility is certainty over truth. Yes, performance over substance. Now, we bring this into the workplace because we've been talking about what's happening in society right now. And what happens? Executives begin to manage perceptions. Middle managers begin managing perceptions. And then employees begin managing perceptions. And ta-da, now everyone's performing. How honest are your people in team meetings or on one-on-one? How often right, because nobody wants to be wrong. How often are your employees taking risks or making mistakes? Do your employees just go along with the narrative, or do they challenge it? Are they disruptive? Because we know those that are disruptive, they're your high value employees for the most part. I know there are some employees that are disruptive just to be asses. But the employees that are being disruptive, from that strategic lens of moving the organization forward, those are your true value assets or value assets in an organization. They're also one of the first group of employees that get terminated when the narrative becomes overpowering and the narrative is wrong. hmm This is where that organizational dysfunction really begins, because organizations don't fail from a lack of information. They fail from a lack of truth. Leadership teams don't fail from a lack of information. They fail from a lack of truth and perception. And the data is staggering there. McKinsey employees who trust leadership are significantly more engaged, more innovative, and more committed to organizational outcomes. This is why we do engagement surveys, because engagement surveys help tell us the trust of an organization. Yet many people don't want to agree with that. Research from Amy Edmondson, we talked about her on the last episode around psychological safety and the bullshit there, has repeatedly demonstrated that organizations thrive when people can speak up, challenge assumption, and surface problems early. The data also supports that those individuals are the ones that get terminated first when there is an unhealthy culture. Many leaders unintentionally reward agreement, complacency, political skill, message discipline, risk avoidance. Oh my God, all those behaviors suppress the truth. And then comes the normalization effect underneath all of this, where employees adapt. The first time leadership ignores reality, people notice. The 10th time, we expect it. The 100th time, people call it culture, both in society and in the workplace. I mean, the first time the president of the United States throws a hissy fit, we're like, wow. And nobody notices. The parties don't notice. We're like, ooh. But the 10th time, we're like, oh, yeah, we're kind of expecting this. And the 100th time, it's like, well, what are we hearing now? Well, that's just that person. Same thing happens in an organization. The first time someone is disrespectful and it gets overlooked by their leadership when they've been notified. The 10th time, now we're adapting to it. Well, that's just how this person behaves. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Because that person dings your culture. And not only does it ding that person, but it dings the leader who doesn't hold them accountable. Oh my God, we're back to accountability again. So once people stop telling the truth, leaders begin making decisions inside a fake reality. And trust me, any and all of the data, it all looks good because you're in the world of make-believe. Your dashboards suddenly look phenomenal, and culture surveys look great. Everything looks fantastic. Leadership buys into the spin. It's all about the spin to get, the good little, oh, weren't you so good? Or, oh, here's your end of the year commission, your bonus. Until it's not. Until it is not. Every major organization collapse following this pattern. I'm watching one right now. Every major organization collapse follows this pattern. People knew, people saw, people warned, Nobody listened because performance had become more important than reality. Think about that. So let's stop pretending. Leadership isn't difficult because leaders don't know what to do. Leadership is difficult because leaders know exactly what needs to be done, and they understand the consequences of doing it. They know who the toxic executive is. They know which leader is destroying trust. Right? They know which processes are breaking down and costing money, and they know which behaviors are tolerated and by whom. They completely see where that accountability disappears, and they know where politics outweigh performance. That challenge isn't awareness. That challenge is courage. Because real leadership requires risk. We seem to have forgotten that. Real leadership requires risk. The risk of popularity, the risk to your approval, risk to your relationships or criticism or being wrong. At the end of the day, performance leadership, it requires none of that. Like if you're sitting there and going, I don't think there's anything wrong with performance leadership, shoot me an email and I'll send you the cases. Performance leadership is lazy. It requires none of that. It doesn't take into account the employees and the business drive. You simply manage the appearance of progress. It's lip service. And organizations and their employees are paying the price of this. You see, tune those ears. Employees, we don't want perfect leaders. Employees want honest leaders. And that's not just Dr. Lauran saying that. Research consistently shows trust is built through competence, integrity, consistency, and benevolence. Know what's not on that list? Charisma, executive presence, LinkedIn followers, podcast appearances, and corporate videos. That's what's not on the list. Employees don't trust leaders because they're polished. They trust them because they're predictable, because they tell the truth, they make mistakes, they make the hard decisions, and they're accountable equally across all. Because the words and actions, they align. That's leadership. Everything else is leadership marketing. So here's your reset for today. Leadership is not what you say when things are easy. Leadership is what you do when truth becomes expensive. Anybody can lead during stability. Anybody can inspire during growth. Hell, anybody can talk about values when there's zero cost attached. Leadership begins when reality demands a decision. The future doesn't belong to the most visible leaders. The future belongs to the most credible leaders, and we are starting to see this pivot in the workplace. Leaders willing to confront reality before reality confronts them in the ass. Because credibility compounds, trust compounds, integrity compounds, just like dysfunction does. And every organization gets the culture they tolerate. Not the culture they advise, but the culture they tolerate. So, my friends, here's the question. When employees talk about leadership inside your organization, are they talking about what leaders say, or are they talking about what leaders do? Because that answer will tell you everything. This is Dr. Lauran Star. I appreciate you tuning in today. This is Culture Shock, where workplace culture collides with societal chaos. And remember, what you tolerate becomes your culture. If you're rewarding the appearance of accountability or visibility over credibility, communication over courage, then you're not building leaders, my friends. You're building performers. And eventually, your audience will figure it out. See you next time. This has been Culture Shock with Dr. Lauran Star, the show where workplace culture collides with societal reality, and the system nobody wants to question finally gets called out. New episodes drop every Monday and Wednesday, breaking down societal and leadership failures, cultural dysfunction, and behavioral patterns shaping today's workplace and society. Have a question, a workplace story, or thoughts on the show? Go right ahead and email Dr. Lauran Star directly at lauran@drlauranstar.com. Until next time, challenge the narrative, disrupt the normalization, and remember, what you tolerate is your culture.